Hello, grade 8 learner. Welcome again to another mathematics lesson. For this video lesson, we will be learning about the graph of a linear function. This is based on the K-12 curriculum learning competency. The learner illustrates a linear function. It's another great day to learn, so grab your pen, paper, and module as you start watching and learning from this video lesson. Happy learning! Refer to Quarter 2, Module 4 entitled Linear Functions for this lesson. In this problem, we are given the graph of the linear function from which we are going to identify the following characteristics. To do that, we must observe the graph and identify each characteristic being asked for. Let us process what we know. To identify the domain and range, we take a look at the values of x and y along the line. We have already learned from previous lessons that the domain is the set of x coordinates, while the range is the set of y coordinates. To identify the x and y intercepts in the graph, we look at the x and y axis. Recall that the x-intercept is the point that intersects the x-axis, while the y-intercept is the point that intersects the y-axis. And finally, to identify the slope of the graph, recall that the slope describes the steepness of the line and is solved through the equation slope, represented by m, is equal to the rise over run. Let us solve. To determine the domain, we look at the x-coordinates that are included in the graph. Since the line can be extended, this means that all real numbers on the x-axis will be included in the graph. This means that the domain of the function is the set of all real numbers. Next, to determine the range, we look at the values of y that are included in the graph. Again, since the line can be extended, this means that all y values will be included in the graph. Therefore, the range is also the set of all real numbers. Next, we identify the x and y intercepts. To identify the x-intercept, we identify the point on the graph where it intersects the x-axis. We see that the graph intersects the x-axis at point 3, 0, which means the x-intercept is at 3, 0. To identify the y-intercept, we identify the point on the graph where it intersects the y-axis. We see that the graph intersects the y-axis at point 0, 2, which means the y-intercept is at 0, 2. Lastly, we identify the slope. We know that the slope describes the steepness of the line, and we use the formula slope is equal to rise over run. To do that, first we identify 2 points on the line. From the first point, we move 1 unit down to identify the rise, and then 3 units right for the run. This gives us -1 as the value of rise and 3 as the value of the run, which means the value of the slope is -1 over 3. Let us state the conclusions to our problem. From our analysis of the graph, we know that the domain and range is the set of all real numbers. We saw that the x-intercept of the function is at 3, 0, while the y-intercept is at 0, 2. We also solved for the slope, which is negative 1 over 3. Congratulations for finishing this video lesson. Now apply what you have learned because, to quote the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, the doer alone learneth. We'll see you again in our next video lesson.